I have a very complicated relationship with The Last of Us. The Last of Us Part 1 is easily one of, if not my top rated story game of all time. It's a story about hope in times of hopelessness and creating bonds you never thought you could have again. The game made you feel such a deep connection grow over time between the characters of Joel and Ellie, which not only made the game's story compelling, but it made players really care about the characters the way they cared about each other. We get to see their relationship grow naturally throughout the game's story, and it makes you love the characters even more for it. And even with The Last of Us Part 2's very controversial history, its story is still based fully on that bond between Joel and Ellie. It's clear through both the game's events and Ellie's emotional state that Joel had a huge impact on her and that she has deep caring feelings for him even after what transpires in the game's story. Regardless of my feelings on the game and its story, I can acknowledge what they were going for with the themes in the game, and it has some of my favorite moments with the flashback sequence because it's filled with that bond that made me care about what happened with Joel and Ellie in the first game, and it only made it more clear why Ellie was so dedicated to her obsession with avenging Joel. She was overtaken by grief, motivated by hatred, and working overtime to find Abby's group so that she could get the revenge she needed. But apparently someone didn't give the people over at HBO the memo that Ellie was supposed to be a hardened strategist and instead made her an insufferable side character in her own story. They somehow managed to both miss the point of Ellie's character in this story and misrepresent the game's themes and message to such a degree that it genuinely made this hard to watch. It just hurts to see that they managed to take this story, decided to adapt it, but didn't bother to actually attempt to properly explore its themes in any meaningful way, which just leads to a season that really just feels empty. So the question remains, what went wrong with The Last of Us Season 2? Now, this season really has been such a hassle to get through, and it's because of one big problem, and that's the quality of its writing. I am in total disbelief at just how efficiently the writers for this show were able to completely just demolish any subtlety or nuance that The Last of Us Part 2 had and give us the most generic, poorly written version of this story. I already wasn't the biggest fan of Part 2, but eventually I came around from hating it when it initially had come out, so I really did have high hopes for this new season, but oh boy, was I sorely mistaken. The main thing that is immediately evident in the story for The Last of Us Part 2 game is that we were getting a version of Ellie that was much more tactical and hardened by the reality of the world that she lives in, but also brought down by the grief that she carries with her after the loss of her father figure. We see her both struggle with the anger she feels for the people that took her father from her, the pain of loss, and the toll that her obsession with revenge has on her, which all come together to make The Last of Us Part 2 a harrowing and dreary experience overall. Sadly, The Last of Us Season 2 has none of that. Not only did they make the strange choice of making Ellie significantly less tactical and resourceful, but they take away virtually any indication of Ellie's sense of loss over Joel. Sure, it might seem like nothing too shocking to the average viewer who hasn't played either of the games, but the lack of change in Ellie's character this season is a stark contrast to her progression in the game. In this season, she's supposed to be 5 years older, but she manages to talk and act even more like a little kid in this season than in the first. Every 30 seconds, she has to swear and make a sarcastic remark about someone, which I guess would make more sense in the first season, where she's a defensive kid, but this is supposed to be her with 5 more years of life experience after the events of the last game. It's like any character development that she might have experienced at the end of the first season was completely ignored, and now we're back to an Ellie that still looks like a kid, acts like a kid, talks like a kid, but wants to be treated like an adult when she repeatedly throws herself into situations where she has no idea what she's doing. Ellie went through going to military school, losing Riley, traveling cross-country with Joel, fighting on her own, so after 5 more years of experience you would think that she would be an expert, right? No, I guess that would be too obvious, so instead she stands around swearing every 5 seconds, calling herself dumb, and waiting for Dina to actually track Abby's group. It almost seems like they were trying to set up that she would be more of a fighter in this season when she's fighting that huge guy in the first episode and takes him down like it's nothing, just to make us think that she would be capable of carrying out the attack that she does in the game. But then they write her to be completely incompetent and unable to think for herself. Besides Tommy, she's the person that's most affected by Joel's passing and needed revenge, going through so much just to get a sense of justice. But here she hardly seems even remotely capable of doing this without external help. It's just sad that they took what was supposed to be such a calculated, fierce main character and reduced her to a wacky side character. I really don't think Ellie being like this is Bella's fault, but they could have at the very least written Ellie like an adult and not like some whiny kid. I don't know if we can blame the writing, the directing, or the acting for this, but there are so many instances when Ellie essentially screams and hollers to try and seem able and in the right, when she just comes off as so cocky and annoying. In the show, she's not this warrior going through waves of enemies as a vengeful person, but instead she just comes off as this kid who is way over their head and insists that she's capable. This is only made worse when they take this same character who just complains and thinks everyone but her is wrong, and then they try to make her intimidating. She doesn't earn the status that she has in the original because she hasn't shown that she has either the capability to be intimidating or even doing anything really violent. It just leads to a complete lack of believability and makes for a character that we don't want to see succeed. For this season, it seems abundantly clear that despite Ellie being the main character of this season, she's lost all traits that would make her our protagonist, so now Dina has to become the real lead of this story. And it's not even like they made Dina the main character for this season, it's still supposed to be Ellie, but every time she gets a moment to strategize or deal with the situations going on around her, she just waits for Dina or Jesse to basically tell her how to feel and what to do. From the start of this season, Ellie is just being reckless, either by yelling from the rooftops that she's immune, which she would never do in the game, by the way, or by exploring an infested building with Dina for fun when they were specifically told to avoid it, and then they complain that they're being treated unfairly. It seems to be a pattern this season for Dina and Ellie to choose to do something, then they realize they're way in over their heads, and they barely make it out alive. Both of them were equally capable and knew how to work well together, but in this it almost seems like Dina's just dragging Ellie around, having to tell her how to do the things that she should already know how to do. The entire point of this mission is that it's one that Ellie feels that she needs to take, one that she works hard to execute, and Dina just couldn't let her go alone. Not for Dina to be fully in charge and have Ellie just follow close behind waiting for her instructions. The writers didn't even have enough faith in their main character to lead the story and work together with Dina, so they just wrote Dina to take charge and do all the work so that the story can move along. Dina's the one who basically has to explain to Ellie that what happened to Joel merits the need to get some payback, because he was like a father to both of them. Legitimately, she has to tell Ellie to care, basically, because she just goofs off while Dina's the one that's actually planning and doing everything that the two of them should be doing. She's the one that shows the grief that she feels for both what happened in her past and about Joel, and somehow the writers understood the message enough to have her say that revenge eats you up from inside, but they didn't make our main character, who supposedly wants revenge, come to that realization herself. They gave any interesting aspects of Ellie's character to Dina, so now we're left with an annoying shell of a compelling character, and she's supposed to be our lead. She barely even acknowledges caring about avenging her father figure in the first place, when she's the one with the entire history with him, while Dina actually feels the hate that Ellie is supposed to be feeling in this moment. I genuinely don't get why they would make her this reliant on other people to tell her what to do and how to feel when the exact opposite is true in the game. She's taking charge and going on an obsessive takedown of the wolves, tracking each one down and making sure that she can figure out more of where Abby might be through them. She even leaves Jesse behind to continue because she has to finish her mission, regardless of if he wants to come along or not. Then it just makes it worse in moments when she almost does act this way, but instead she acts out, like when she yells at Jesse for rightfully calling her out for being selfish, saying to the community! And she yells in such an over-the-top way, acting like she doesn't need anyone's help when she clearly does. Gay Melly was absolutely selfish. She was even self-destructive, but her and Jesse were still close friends at the end of the day, and they cared about each other. She still cared about him and Dina's well-being. She didn't yell at him despite the fact that he's been helping her out up to this point. But I guess it makes sense with her character this season since she hasn't been able to do things on her own throughout the entire season, so I guess that's at the very least consistent. It's because of this complete lack of self-awareness that we get an Ellie that not only is extremely in over her head, but one who seemingly only cares about herself and not the person that she lost, and that is simply not the Ellie that the story needs at all. The biggest sin this season when it comes to Ellie is just the lack of a burden over what happened to Joel. throughout the game, with every expression, with moments of dialogue, with the flashbacks of Joel and Ellie, you get a sense of the huge weight looming over Ellie. His presence is missing from her life, and it's something that she is constantly wrestling with, because he just meant so much to her. Towards the end of the game, we even see that she has PTSD from having to experience what happened to Joel, and all of that is both to instill just how deeply she cared about Joel, what he meant to her, and to convey to the audience that the writers know how much they both mean to the player. And I'll admit that for the first part of the episode after Joel's demise, we see Ellie grieving, crying into Joel's jacket, needing to get revenge. But as soon as Ellie and Dina are off to Seattle, we lose any sense that Ellie is even thinking about what happened to Joel. She's not being eaten up inside by it, she's not struggling with any difficult emotions, nothing. She just goes about being as obnoxious as she was at the start of this season, with no change in personality whatsoever, which defeats the entire point of her emotional arc. This was supposed to be an earth-shattering event that changes Ellie from a snarky person into someone who can't even sleep properly because of the hatred and grief that's built up from the trauma she's experienced. Here, Ellie just couldn't be more thrilled to be adventuring with her girlfriend, which I don't think I need to say that this should not be a fun journey for her. She's not a kid anymore, and all of this is because of the loss of Joel. But I guess to her this is just another Tuesday because she seems a-okay. Then we get thrown a curveball with episode 6, where we actually get to see moments connecting the two seasons with Joel and Ellie bonding and becoming even more like a father and a daughter, going through struggles and having difficult conversations. We see what Joel does for Ellie's birthday every year and how their relationship changes after everything that's happened between them, and how Ellie confronts him with what he did at the end of the first season. Not only that, but we get to see how the way that Joel grew up with his father affects the type of father that he is. He simply wants to do a little better than his father did, and that's the lesson that he wants to pass on to Ellie. That she should try to be better than him, even if he can't be better. All of these things are what make The Last of Us interesting and get us to really care about what happens to these characters. Their interactions and the emotions that they go through together, even during an apocalypse where there should be nothing but dread. They were both broken in their own ways, but they found what they needed in each other. It honestly kind of sucks just how good episode 6 is, which feels weird to say that it's bad that an episode was good, but its quality just exceeds every other episode by a long shot. We finally see something reminiscent of the original story, where we see how Joel is moving past his broken nature with Ellie's hopeful spirit, after having believed that he would never be truly happy again after losing Sarah. It gave me a taste of what I had loved about both the first game and the first season, and then I was thrust back into boredom and disappointment. It made it feel like the people behind the show were almost teasing us, reminding us that they know how to write properly, how to pull at your heartstrings and actually properly represent their characters, but only for this 1 hour-long episode. Whoever wrote this episode as well as they did should have honestly just been in charge of the entire show, because this was a diamond in the rough, and I mean rough. But this episode truly cemented to me that this season was not just disappointing, but it was upsetting. They had the potential to improve upon the original by focusing more on the immeasurable damage that Joel's passing and inevitable obsession with revenge would have on Ellie and how it would shape her character, but instead we end up focusing on basic teen romance that feels out of place and unnecessary in the story, while completely ignoring the emotional crux of this season as if it's not why everyone is here. Overall, I think that what this season is missing is some actual purpose in its writing, instead of heavily depending on cheap melodrama to try and keep you entertained. Since the first season of this show, it's been obvious that action was going to be less of a focus, with more emphasis being put over the people living in the apocalypse and their relationships with one another, especially in such an intense environment as a zombie apocalypse. They were able to take smaller character moments from the game and turn them into character-defining sequences that help us see these people in a different light. We see them struggle with past traumas, heavy burdens, and even take whole episodes to explore an entire tragic relationship. Honestly, it seemed like it would be the perfect place for them to handle the emotional gut punch of Joel's demise, dealing with how it's affecting Ellie and what she does to basically avenge him. But I guess we're the dumb ones for thinking that would be the case, because Ellie seems to just brush over even mentioning a single one of those feelings. Right after the episode where we get to see what Abby does to Joel, Ellie is being just as snarky and dismissive as usual, but then we see that of course it's just a cover for how she really feels about losing Joel. So her and Dina sneak out to go on this vengeful journey that's sure to be full of grief, anger and pain, and that's basically the last instance Ellie seems to care. Right after, she becomes just as chatty and snarky and foul-mouthed as if she wasn't affected by what happened at all. We go back to the adventures of Ellie and Dina with no sense of grief or pain for more than a second because we absolutely need to have Ellie and Dina talk more about their relationship instead of showing them actually working together. We just see them talk and have witty banter, regardless of if we're spending half of the episode just having them talk and not do anything remotely significant. They even take the moments in the game that show how deep their connection is and ruin them. Like when Dina finds out Ellie is immune in the game, she was willing to give up her own gas mask in a selfless act in order to save Ellie from being infected by the spores in the air. Now in the show, Ellie gets bitten, and as soon as they're back in the theater, Dina without hesitation pulls a gun on Ellie, not putting it down the entire night, not trusting that she won't turn during the night. Not even a second of hesitation or sadness for Ellie getting infected. Just straight up ready to put her down, I guess. But the most confusing part is right after, when we get the most intense whiplash as it goes from Dina ready to attack Ellie, Ellie explaining her immunity, Dina saying she's pregnant, and then them immediately getting intimate as if none of this stuff happened beforehand. Then after they're done doing that, they neither acknowledge how crazy what they just did was, but they act as if Dina being pregnant should be celebrated. Ellie literally says, "I'm going to be a dad." No joke. No saying she's become a burden, no struggling with how to feel about her pregnancy, no worrying about what could happen to her and the baby now. Let's just make out and forget about any responsibilities, despite the fact that we're supposed to be hunting down Abby. It's as if this season forgets what its own purpose is, and in doing so, I forget why I'm even watching it. Honestly, with how little they cared about the plot and how much focus they put on these two just having basic interactions that don't develop their relationship in a significant way, it made me just lose all interest in actually watching this for enjoyment. There are shows out there that are a great watch, super entertaining, some that are terrible, laughably bad shows, but then we get the worst category, which is just bland television. This show managed to sprinkle in interesting moments, like the Horde attacking Jackson, the subway chase sequence, anything with Isaac and the wolves basically, and just completely undermine them in every other scene. I don't enjoy saying this, but this show really just blew the wind out of my sails and disappointed me in a way that most adaptations these days tend to do. When something is adapted by somebody who either doesn't understand or doesn't like a piece of media, it becomes a twisted and warped version of its original counterpart, and that's really what I feel happened here. This season was able to make me sad, but I'm guessing not in the way that they intended it. It made me wish that there had been love and care put into every aspect, because it's clear in some areas that there were creative people working on the show who loved The Last of Us and its characters. That's what I felt from the first season, but sadly, it just wasn't there this time around. But this is just another example of an adaptation done wrong, and I never wanted that for The Last of Us. To close, if I had to rate this season out of 10, honestly, I give it 4.5 golf clubs out of 10. Too soon? And just for fun, Season 1 gets 8 broken watches out of 10. Do I recommend this season? No, I don't. At least not if you're a fan of the game. But if you just want to put something on just to watch, sure, why not? It's not the worst thing in the world, but I'm not a fan. Definitely watch Season 1 or at least play the first game, as they were both clearly made with love. Anyways, that's all I have to say, but if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to subscribe or leave a like, as any support would mean the world, and I promise any content coming up will not be this negative. But with that out of the way, I'll catch you next time.